What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to Luttie's Look Back, episode number 23. We've got a fun show today as we talk all things college, from hoops to baseball to softball, from the Hogs to the Red Wolves to the Lions, Bears, and Trojans. But we'll start how we always do with my three big things from Arkansas's ugly loss to South Carolina over the weekend, 72-53. The final score is the Hogs. They lose by 19. So bad I punched a wall, actually. That's how I got the brace on my head. No, I'm just kidding. I had surgery. It was a long time coming. Anyway, I'm like 5 or 6 days out of surgery, but I'm ready for Luttie's Look Back. I was not ready and prepared for this game. I would have liked for a better game for the Razorbacks, a better showing for them. But my three big things, we'll start with the first one, an all-time bad offensive performance. I mean, this whole game was bad from the Razorbacks, but offensively is where we have to start because that was the worst part about this game. In the first half, Arkansas had 14 points. 14 points. They only made a couple field goals. 14 points is the fewest a Coach Cal team has ever had in this century. Now, we've only been, 25 years into this century, but that's a pretty incredible mark knowing how good Coach Cal is. And it makes sense that he hasn't reached that mark at all this century because he's been so good, and Saturday's performance was so bad. And that's a Coach Cal coached team. It's the fewest number of points Arkansas has had in a half since 2003 is the stat that I believe that SEC Network or ESPN showed. Really, really bad. So that's how many points they had in the first half. Altogether, field goal shooting was also not good. 29% field goal percentage. That's their worst mark of the season. That's their worst mark since 2022, since the second or third year of Eric Musselman. They actually had a less than, I think it was a 24% chance or 24% field goal shooting percent in their one of their round of 32 wins in March Madness a few years ago. And they ended up winning that game somehow. In this game, it was the complete opposite. They obviously lost the game, and it was really bad. They only made 15 field goals. Only made 15 buckets this entire game. That's really bad. 15 for 52. They shot the ball 52 times. That's somewhat normal. They only made 15 shots. And the crazier thing is 8 of those 15 shots came in the last 6 minutes of the game. They only had 7 made field goals until this game didn't matter anymore and South Carolina gave up, so Arkansas just started shooting and making shots finally in the last 6 minutes of the game when South Carolina really wasn't playing their defense. This was a weird game, a game just where Arkansas got obliterated, and offensively it was just a really, really bad performance. And another reason why they got obliterated was because of how much they were dominated in the paint, and that's point number 2. 38-18 is the amount that they were outscored in the paint. 38 points for South Carolina, only 18 for Arkansas. So I want to see, Arkansas's got a few games left in the season, maybe a few in the postseason. We'll see. That postseason includes the SEC basketball tournament and the NCAA tournament and NIT, slash NIT. I don't know if they'd say yes to an NIT. I'm not sure. Probably not. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In this game, dominated inside the paint. So what I want to see is them driving to the paint more and trying to get fouled. And they did okay of that in this game and getting to the free throw line, but certainly not good enough and not as good as the South Carolina team led by Colin Murray Boyles, who they talked about over and over again on the broadcast. And yes, he's a good player, and he's going to be a first-round draft pick. And he dominated the Hogs 35 points. But man, he was talked about a lot on this broadcast. And again, he's a really good player. He's going to be good. He's on a pretty bad team in South Carolina. But Arkansas just couldn't defend him. Zvonimir Ivicic's defense is not good. Now, you might say, Nick, he has so-and-so amount of blocks on the year. Look at his highlight tape of all the blocks that he has. Yes, that doesn't mean he's a good defender, though. He has the blocks because he kind of just sits back, he waits, and then once they shoot it, he thinks he has long enough arms to block the shot, which sometimes he does. But when you're going against a guy like Murray Boyles, who just backs you down in the paint and is more physical than you, and every big man that Big Z goes up against is more the other team has a big man that is more physical than Big Z because he's 7'2" and he's kind of scrawny. That's his weakness. His defense is his weakness. Now, sometimes he does a really good job of making up for it and blocks the blocks the crud out of the ball. All right, he blocks it really hard sometimes, and it helps the Razorbacks. And they're like top 20 in the nation in blocks per game because of him and Trevin Brazil. But they're kind of skinny. They don't got a lot of meat on their bones, them two. And so they were dominated inside the paint. Big Z, Trevin Brazil. Jonas Adu played well. Probably his best game as a Razorback. I mean, he had 10 points and 10 rebounds. He's not had anything close to that the entire season. So there's that. There's that positive. But Arkansas just absolutely dominated inside by a South Carolina team that was much better than I thought they would be. I'll give them credit for that. But they're still the last team in the SEC. I think now maybe they're second or third to last. But LSU is probably the last team now. And Arkansas has losses to South Carolina and to LSU. That doesn't help your resume. But is the season over? Not quite. Not quite. I don't think it's there yet, and here's why. South Carolina, yes, they are one of the worst teams in the SEC. But the SEC, I know you've heard it a million times, and I'm going to say it to you again. The SEC is the best conference in college basketball. It's the best conference in the history of college basketball, possibly. South Carolina, that was a quad 2 loss. A quad 2 loss isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. Now, I would have much rather have this loss be in the middle of the season or the early season in Arkansas to recover. The problem with it now is that this game was at the end of the season. Now there's 2 games left. Now, how do you recover after only making 15 field goals in 1 basketball game? How do you recover after getting blown out by the worst team in the SEC? That's the problem. That's the problem with all of this. But I still say there's 2 games left. Arkansas, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later. Arkansas, I think, I'm going to say I know, and I'm no Joe Lunardi, but I know that if they win 3 games, they'll make it into the NCAA basketball tournament. They have 2 games left, so you win both of those, and they get at least 1 game in the SEC basketball tournament. Now, if they lose 1 and win 1 for this next stretch, they need to win 2 in the SEC tournament. We'll talk about some of those scenarios in a bit, but I'm not saying the season is over quite yet. What did Coach Cal say after the game? Let's hear what he had to say.
I told the guys after, folks, we've been through a gauntlet just like South Carolina. If you want to know what I told Coach when I walked down, I said, if you played all home games, you'd be top 10 because they play really well in this building. They beat Texas the same way they beat us. It was almost carbon copy. But when you go 0 for 17, shouldn't win a game. Someone got to make a shot. You were 0 for 17, you're not going to be in a good game. I told them 8 games like we played, you were due for a dud. It was a dud. Move on. I said, now, what they did to us, they exploited us near the basket, which my guess is every team will try to do now. So we got to figure that out. But I said, burn the tape and let's get ready for Vandy.
Arkansas, they got to win 3 games. 3 games. 3 games, you make the NCAA tournament. Joe Lunardi, I don't know if you watch my show, but I think you'd agree with me. 3 games and they make the NCAA tournament. If they go 0 for 2 these last 2 games, you got to win 3 in the SEC tournament. That's pretty tough. That's beating some really good teams and making it to the semifinals, I think, of the SEC basketball tournament. You win 1, you lose 1, you got to win 2 in the SEC tournament. You win both these games. You beat Vanderbilt and then you beat Mississippi State. I think you still got to win 1 in the SEC basketball tournament, maybe 2. But we'll see. That's all to be decided in the future. Right now, not the most optimism with this Razorback basketball team. Still, a lot of basketball to be played. Hopefully, Adu Thero can be back. We'll have to see how that goes. So that's men's basketball talk for the Razorbacks. How we're kind of going to do this show, we'll talk Razorbacks, and then we'll go on to some of the other teams as far as their sports. But we'll talk about each specific university first, I should say. So that's Arkansas men's basketball talk. We'll move on to the women's side of things for the Razorbacks. They ended the regular season on a bit of a positive note yesterday with an 80-71 comeback win over Texas A&M. It snapped their 7-game losing streak. They avoided last place in the SEC. Now for them in the conference tournament, up next will be the 13 seed, which we'll get to in a second. But instead of being dead last in the SEC and a really bad finish to the season, they beat A&M, and I think Arkansas is what did I put there? 3 SEC wins this year, and 2 of them have come to Texas A&M. So A&M is not a very good women's basketball team. That certainly showed in this game, and Arkansas isn't either, but they did enough to get the win. And, credit Coach Neighbors and his squad for having some sort of resilience to be down in this game and to not fully give up when basically the season is over. They're going to be playing no postseason whatsoever. We know they won't make the NCAA tournament. They won't make the WNIT. I think there's a WCBI or something like that. They're not going to play in that. The SEC tournament's going to be their last time playing basketball this season. So you give them a little credit that they showed some resilience in this game. They were able to come back. Izzy Higginbottom, another great performance from her with 27 points, 19 free throws. I think I saw that she broke the all-time season free throw makes, the most free throws made in the season in Razorback history. So great for her. I'm sure she's going to break some other records this season, and they've still got. I don't know if the SEC tournament counts for some of those records, but she's put together a really good season. Phoenix Stotan, who we haven't talked about a ton, you see her behind me. She also had a really good game with 23 points. Kiki Smith, having her healthy is great. Again, there's not really a future to this team, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. They made their 3-pointers in this game. That was great. They did enough to get the win, so that's what you wanted to see out of this game. So that's enough talk about this game. Let's take a look at the bracket for the SEC basketball tournament. As I mentioned, a little hard to see on your screen, so if you're watching at home, maybe stand up, maybe walk a little closer to your screen so you can see here. But I tried to lay it out the best I could for these brackets. As you can see, Arkansas, the number 13 seed, going to be playing on, Wednesday night in Greenville, Wednesday afternoon, at 12:30 p.m. tip-off time against Georgia, a Georgia team that pretty sure Arkansas already lost to this season. Again, they'll try to pull the upset there, and then they got a gauntlet. A gauntlet is all I can say to get to. I guess their goal is to win it all. Crazier things have happened, but. You see these upsets sometimes in men's college basketball this time of year. It's March, it's madness, it happens. But for the women's basketball, not quite as much, and probably very unlikely for Arkansas. So that's a look at the SEC basketball tournament. That's enough talk on Arkansas women's basketball. Let's go to baseball now. It wasn't always pretty over the weekend for the Diamond Hogs, but they swept Charlotte over the weekend, as I just mentioned. Friday, an 11-10 win. Let's kind of go by this day by day. First, kind of an overview of the weekend. Friday, 11-10 win. Saturday, 8-5 a win, and Sunday, a 4-3 win. The biggest thing out of all of this, I'm going to talk about some details. The biggest thing with all of that is they were all wins. You got 3 wins, okay? You can't complain too much about 3 wins, about a sweep against a Charlotte team that I'm really curious to see if they're going to be good this year. And I know they're like a mid-major team, and it's Charlotte, Arkansas should dominate. But I watched most of all 3 of these games, and that was a good 49ers team. So I'd be interested to see if they win their conference and then they play in the NCAA tournament. That rolls around in May for baseball. But anyway, Arkansas in this game, let's start with Friday, and let's start with we'll talk pros and cons because there was both in this series. The con, probably the biggest one, was Gabe Gackle and his start for the Razorbacks. He's looked okay this season. His first outing against Washington State was good. Then his second outing against TCU, I believe, was not as good. And then this was hopefully the worst outing we see out of him all season. Even against SEC teams, I'd hope he does better than this. 3 innings pitched, 9 earned runs. That's bad. He allowed 10 hits. They were just destroying him. And they came out firing. Give credit to Charlotte in this game on Friday night and Friday afternoon. I think it was Friday afternoon. Maybe been Friday night. I don't know. On Friday, Charlotte came out firing, and they came out dominating in this game. But give credit to Arkansas. Every time Charlotte punched, Arkansas punched back harder. And that's the theme of this series against the 49ers that the Hogs did. They came back in the 4th inning. They scored 10 runs in the 4th inning. Now, there's been all this speculation about Nate Thompson, and he's the hitting coach, and is he really the guy? Is it time to fire him? Is it time to move on? I still am kind of leaning towards yes, it's time to move on. But when you score 10 runs in an inning, doesn't matter against who. That should be you should be well respected and well honored as a hitting team for doing that. Now, they didn't have the best weekend, I know, but 10 runs in an inning is pretty good. They go on to get the win on Friday night. Saturday, their starter, Zach Root, pretty good, 5 1/3, 3 earned runs, and 8 strikeouts. They go on to get the win, 8-5. That was their most comfortable win. Again, Friday and Sunday was only a 1-point margin. Sunday, Landon Biocheese was the starter. We'll see what Gage Wood is up to. He's been dealing with that shoulder injury that he injured in last weekend's Arlington series. So hopefully he's okay. But Biocheese, he's the one who filled in for him this weekend, and he dominated. Out of all the pitchers this weekend, he was by far the best. 6 1/3 innings pitched, only 1 earned run and 7 strikeouts. And then after that, Parker Coyle comes in. He does pretty good to end, I think, that 6th inning or 7th inning, and then comes in the next inning after that. 9 pitches, 9 strikes, 3 strikeouts. That's what they call an immaculate inning in baseball. That's not just a term that I'm saying, oh, he's immaculate. No, it's a baseball term. I don't know. They make it up. I don't know. Immaculate inning. That's what Parker Coyle did. So really impressive what he did and the Razorbacks did as far as pitching. And then they fell behind. Or I guess they didn't fall behind. Charlotte tied the game in the top of the 9th. But again, Arkansas punched back. They were resilient in this game. Logan Maxwell walked it off for the Razorbacks. We'll talk a little bit more about these games, but first let's hear what head coach Dave Van Horn had to say after the series and after the game on Sunday.
Yeah, it was a really good series. A lot of different scenarios, and coming back first day, and then kind of holding on, and then today letting the lead slip in the 9th, and rallied there in the bottom of the 9th to win it. So hopefully we learn a little bit about ourselves. And, I do feel like that we have no problem playing from behind, or, we just don't panic too much. We've got a pretty good team, pretty good lineup. We got some guys swinging it really well. We got some guys that didn't swing it well this weekend, and we'll try to get that ironed out the next day or two. But overall, it's a really good weekend for us. Didn't give them anything, didn't walk very many people in the last 4 games, and didn't make a physical error. So that's always good to see.
And DVH mentioned it there about some guys hitting the ball well, some not as well. One of the guys who's definitely hitting it well, Kohio Aloy. If you haven't heard about this guy, the Hawaiian native, the younger brother of Vaheva Aloy, if you remember him from last season, who's also been really good this season. Both of them have been great, but the younger Aloy batting a .556 batting average. Incredible. He's got 15 hits on the season, 5 doubles. All 3 of those metrics rank #1 on the team for the Razorbacks. So really impressive what he's been able to do. We'll be interested to see how the Razorbacks do going forward. They've got a couple more games, couple more series until conference play starts here in a few weeks. So it's in a few weeks, maybe a month. It's getting very soon for Arkansas baseball. That is baseball talk. We'll move on quickly to softball. They also dominated. I don't even know if dominated is the right word, whatever the word above dominated is. And the first ever Woo Pig Invitational, Arkansas softball won all 5 of those games, going 5-0 in the Woo Pig Classic, all of them coming of run rule victories. So really impressive what the Razorbacks were able to do on the softball side. And for more on that, we'll head over to Courtney Teifel and hear what she had to say about the weekend.
I thought it was great. I think that it's nice when the team takes care of business in a way that just lets us do what we need to do more than anything. So I thought they stayed the course really well. I think there was a little bit of lull in some of those innings. I think that happens sometimes, but we snapped out of it really well. And then I think there's some things we could do a little better today. It's nice to learn that from a win. We're still at that point where we're still learning and taking steps towards being our best, but we are taking those steps each day. And so I'm just really proud of the team overall on the weekend. Yeah, another good weekend for the Razorbacks, especially, as I mentioned, all 5 of their wins came on run rule victories. One of those teams, Missouri State, not very good at softball. They only had 1 win this year. 2 of those other teams, Iowa and Illinois, are decent teams. Now they're bottom tier teams in the Big Ten. That's what they were last year, and I assume that's what they're going to be this year. But still, no doubt, run rule victories are run rule victories, and Arkansas has a really good start to this season for softball, probably better than they could have imagined. Let's move on to gymnastics now. The Gymbacks on Friday night, falling to Alabama, but putting up their highest score of the season. They've got 2 meets left
at Kentucky, and then at home against Missouri. So they've had a good year so far, and the SEC championship will be in a few weeks for the Gymbacks. That's some Gymbacks talk. Now track and field. They had the SEC championships this past weekend. The women, as you can see behind me, won yet again another SEC title. I think it's like their 11th or something, or 20. I don't know. It's a lot for this team, for this Arkansas program that is really good. The women's team getting first place, the men falling just short, getting second place. But the highlight of the day, for the track and field side, on the men's side, was Jordan Anthony. He won the 60-meter. He's a wide receiver for the Razorbacks. If you don't, you probably recognize that name if you're a big football fan. First place in the 60-meter and set a school record. So really impressive what Anthony did. He's super fast, so hopefully the football team can utilize that coming up in the fall. So that is all the talk we have about the Razorbacks. Now it's time for the Red Wolves to move on to Arkansas State. First, the men's side of things. They do what they're supposed to and take the win 94-67 over Louisiana Monroe. It's kind of a close game, and then the Red Wolves pulled ahead and dominated. Joseph Pinion shot the ball a lot, but made a couple of threes when he needed to. Isaiah Nelson, I mean, he's been dominant. If you haven't seen the tear he's been on, he's had like 10-plus rebounds in every game the past 4 games. He had a 21-rebound game a few games ago. He's been on a tear. He had 19 rebounds in this game. So you like to see what Nelson is doing at this point in the season. Arkansas State as a team shot it efficiently, 48% from the field, 32% from beyond the arc, only 3 turnovers. That's the biggest stat you want to look at Arkansas State. Again, it's against a not great ULM team, but only 3 turnovers is pretty good. So you like what you see out of Arkansas State. And with the win, they claimed a share of the Sun Belt Conference title. So really impressive what they have been able to do this season. And Coach Hodgson's second year? I'm not sure. I've only been here for less than a year, so I can't remember that exactly. But Coach Hodgson has done a really good job with this program. So they were in a 4-way tie for first place in the Sun Belt Conference. But as we'll take a look in the bracket here, Arkansas State gets the 4 seed in the Sun Belt Conference Championship Tournament. All right, now I talked about brackets again. You're going to have to stand back up, walk a little closer to your TV, or zoom in on your phone. I don't know if that's even possible on THV 11, but hey, maybe we should make it possible. The Sun Belt Conference Tournament, though, bracket is really complicated. So you're looking at this and you're like, that's not how a bracket should work. You're right. That is not how a bracket should work. I don't know why they changed it to this, but they did. So we're just going to go along with it. You can see eventually you're going to find where Arkansas State is. It's a little far from my vantage point as well, but they've got the 4 seed. They'll play in the quarterfinals. Then they need to win, I think it is 2 or 3 games to be crowned champion of the SBC. And the biggest thing of all, to make it into March Madness. So hopefully Arkansas State, the men, can do that. Let's move on to the A-State women now. They get the win 89-85 over Troy as well over the weekend. It was a big win. It was a win that they needed to get the 2 seed in the tournament. It helped that a few other teams lost. Troy almost came back in this one to bite Arkansas State, but A-State just held on at the end. It was a big Anna Griffin 3 with about 7 seconds left that helped the Red Wolves get the win. And Anna Griffin only had 9 points. 3 of them coming at the most clutch time possible with 7 seconds left and making that 3-pointer. And Anna Griffin is a player I have barely talked about on this show. And that's what's so impressive about this A-State women's basketball team. They are incredibly, incredibly deep. Kristen Rose, Zion Shannon, Winter Rogers, Kennedy Montu, the list goes on of dynamic guards and a couple forwards they have here or there that can make some really good plays. They play with that hard press offense, and you know, if they can win their conference tournament, let's take a look at their conference tournament. Again, I know it's complicated. You'll see A-State though has the 2 seed in the SBC women's basketball tournament. A-State, all they got to do is win 2 games. That's the beauty of this weird looking bracket. They got to win 2 games. You would think they can win their first one, probably against that 3 or 4 seed. And then after that, they would face off against most likely a James Madison team that A-State hasn't played all season. So honestly, I don't know a ton about the Dukes on the women's basketball side of things. But if A-State can win their first game, which they should in the semifinals, all they got to do is get past JMU, a team they haven't played all year. And so that's a disadvantage for A-State, but that's also a disadvantage for JMU. JMU hasn't faced the press that A-State has that A-State brings this season. So once again, really impressive of this Arkansas State women's basketball team. Picked second to last, I think, in the conference, or somewhere down towards the bottom. They finished second, so at a really good point in the season. Hopefully they can rattle off a few wins and make it into the NCAA basketball tournament. That's A-State women's basketball and men's basketball. On the baseball side, quickly, not the great weekend for Arkansas State baseball. They were swept by Jacksonville 10-0 on Friday, 8-7 on Saturday, close one. And then yesterday's game was so close, so frustrating. They had the lead in the top. This game went to extra innings, top of the 12th inning. Arkansas State hits a home run. Looks like they're going to win it. And then Jacksonville State comes right back in the bottom of the 12th inning, scores 2 runs. And they end up not only winning the game, they'd already won the series. They swept Arkansas State in this one. So tough look for Arkansas State. They're now 3-9. Their next game home tomorrow, actually, against Little Rock. So we'll keep an eye on that game. That is Arkansas State talk. We'll move on to Little Rock now. First on the men's basketball side. We are rolling right along, folks. Trojans come back. It falls short to SIUE 73-65. The Trojans needed this win to maybe get the 2 seed, but they lost, and now they'll have the 4 seed, which we'll look at in a second in the bracket. SIUE, they jumped out to a 15-plus lead in this game. A late comeback by the Trojans, but it just wasn't enough. They have just moments throughout the entire season where they have some offensive droughts. They've relied on their defense, and they have the #1 defense in the conference. But when your offense can't contribute, that defense doesn't mean as much. So it's a painful time to watch sometimes because you want to watch teams make threes, and Little Rock will shoot them here or there. Not a lot of them, but they'll shoot them here and there. And they have some players that can make them. But in this game, they just weren't making them. Jordan Jefferson had 21 points. He's peaking at the right time. Some other players like Imwani Wilkinson are not. Only 3 points in this game. So you want to see your team playing your best basketball in March. Little Rock, I think, has lost 2 of their last 4 or 5. So maybe not trending in the right direction. This is an SIU team that is pretty good. I'll give them that. I think they're now the 2 or the 3 seed in the OVC bracket. But Little Rock's not super deep, and I think that could be an issue for them going forward. Let's take a look at their bracket for the OVC men's basketball. All right, this is a better visual, right? There's some brackets where it's just like, I don't know what I'm looking at. This one, hopefully, you've sat back down on your couch. You can look at this and you can enjoy looking at this bracket. Little Rock, the 4 seed, they'll play in the quarterfinals on March 4th. Face off against Tennessee Tech or UT Martin. They need to win 1, 2, 3 games to make it into the NCAA basketball tournament. They'll have to get past some pretty good teams, whether it be SEMO or SIUE once again, or even Tennessee State. But Little Rock has some good weapons. In the OVC, there's not a lot of great teams in this conference. So if Little Rock, despite its lack of depth, can put together some good games, you never know. They could also make it into March Madness. That's the men's side of things. To the Little Rock women hoops side, now they also fall to SIUE in a much worse loss, only by 5, 81-76. But SIUE, they're a women's team that only has 6 wins on the season. Little Rock just handed them their 6th win of the season overall, their 4th win in conference play. Thankfully for Little Rock, though, Southern Indiana also lost over the weekend, so Little Rock still claimed the 4 seed. Trojans were down by as many as 13. They cut the lead to 3, the deficit to 3. Give credit to Jordan Holman and how physical and great she played in this game. 25 points, 10 rebounds. She had a couple clutch three-pointers down the stretch, but then missed one about with 10 seconds left or so that would have tied the game. So tough look for Little Rock. At the end of the day, though, it doesn't really matter. They're still the 4 seed in the tournament. Let's take a look at that bracket for the women's side of things. Just like the men, I know not as visually exciting to look at. I couldn't find that cool graphic as I could for the men's one. But you see here, the women are the 4 seed. They'll have to get past a pretty good Tennessee Tech team or a good Lindenwood team to make it on not only to the championship, but to be crowned an OVC champion, which is something Little Rock hasn't done recently, so it'd be nice to see them get that win, get the win in the OVC tournament. So that is Little Rock basketball. We'll move on to Little Rock baseball now. As I flip my pages of a lot of notes, we talk about baseball, basketball. For Little Rock baseball team, they've struggled since their opening weekend. They swept Evansville, which was like, okay, that was pretty good because Evansville, they made it to the Super Regional last year. they have not done well since then. This past weekend, they were swept by Murray State. 9-8, the final score on Friday. On Saturday, they lost 21-2. I get kind of giving up and holding on to your pitchers for Sunday, but 21-2, that's a really bad loss. It's embarrassing. And you hope if you're going to hold some pitchers on for the next day that you win, but then they lost on Sunday 6-4. They had an early lead. That's kind of the common occurrence with a lot of these teams. They have an early lead, and then they blow it later on in some of these later innings. So Little Rock struggling. They've got Arkansas State tomorrow, as I mentioned, at their place. That's all the talk for Little Rock. We've talked Hogs, Red Wolves, Trojans, now to the Bears. First off, on the women's side of hoops, UCA ends their regular season on a bit of a sour note, falling in North Alabama 66-56. Now, I will say the Sugar Bears already had the 2 seed wrapped up, so I'm going to move quick through this game because it didn't really matter. There is some concern because they were up 9 in this game, and then you could tell it kind of meant a little bit more for the Lions because they were playing for better seeding in the A-Sun tournament. UCA was not. I am a little bit concerned about their lack of offense, too. I know these players didn't play as much as they normally do, but Jade Upshaw, 4 points. Leah Mafua, also 4 points. And then Bree Stevens, 4 points. Those are their 3 best offensive weapons. Kinley Fisher was their go-to scorer in this game, which has rarely happened this year, probably the first time. No disrespect to Kinley Fisher. She's a great player. But to have some players like Upshaw, Mafua, and Stevens not having very many points is a little concerning. But again, this game didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. We'll take a look at the bracket here. They secured the 2 seed a week ago. So this game did not matter. This is a little bit more of a normal conference tournament bracket. You see they've got the 2 seed. They'll have to get past a couple teams. And most likely, if everything goes according to chalk, UCA will make it on to the finals, and they will face off against Florida Gulf Coast, who beat them by 20+ last time they played them. So we'll see if UCA can pull off a miraculous upset against a really good Florida Gulf Coast team, hopefully in the finals, but we'll keep an eye on that one in the coming weeks. All right, to the men's side of hoops now for UCA. Bears in the first round of the A-Sun tournament, taking down Stetson 77-72. A bit of an upset, if you want to call it that. The Bears were the 10 seed. The Hatters were the 9 seed. Both teams, as you can see behind me, not the best records this season. But UCA, they got the win. And, you know, give them credit. They've had a tough season. They've had multiple injuries. I feel like every one of their star players or best players have been injured at some point this season. And now becomes, quite a challenge. Today, they'll face off against Lipscomb at Lipscomb in Nashville. This will be a very challenging game for the Bears, facing off against a really good Lipscomb team that was supposed to win this tournament, that was supposed to win their conference, that won it last year. It would be a historic upset if UCA could somehow pull off the upset against Lipscomb today. But you never know. If they win that game, they, of course, got to win a couple more to make it to the championship, and then they got to win the championship to make it to March Madness. So we'll see what happens with the UCA men's basketball team going forward. That is all the talk for UCA. Now, before we get to my Lutties look ahead, we'll briefly talk about UAPB, some quick updates on them. First, on the women's basketball side, they lost their 8th game in a row for the weekend, 78-48, crushing loss to Mississippi Valley State. They've got a couple games left to somehow resurrect what's been a pretty bad season for the women's basketball team. The men's basketball team, while they have also had a rough season, they've been playing better as of late. They've won 2 out of their last 3, including this past weekend, an 83-58 win over Mississippi Valley State. It was their largest conference margin victory. Oh my gosh, I gotta slow down. Their largest margin of victory in conference play this season. Granted, against a Delta Devils team that is, I think, bottom 2 in the net ranking, so one of the worst teams in the country. UAPB is also bottom 5 in the net ranking, so also one of the worst teams in the country. But they got the win. They've won 2 out of their last 3. So, you know, head in the right direction. They've got 2 games left that are winnable games if you want to salvage what's left of a bad season for both of these men's basketball and women's basketball. And then baseball, they're still looking for their first win under new head coach Logan Stout. Was really hoping it would come yesterday. They were up on Abilene Christian, I think 11-7 or something like that. They ended up losing 14-11. They've put up some impressive numbers. this season, so they can hit the ball. But it seems like pitching has been their struggle this season for the Golden Lions. So they're still winless on the season. They got swept by ACU this past weekend. And softball also struggled this weekend, losing to Southern Miss and Louisiana Tech. We'll end my show how we always do with the Lutties Look Ahead. Let's talk about men's basketball. Again, I don't want to call it a must-win because I just told you guys about, 20, 30 minutes ago that if Arkansas doesn't win this game, they got to win 3. They got to win 3. That's the magic number. They got to win 3. So if they lose this game, they have to beat Mississippi State. Got to win 2 in the SEC tournament. I'm still keeping my options open if they lose this game because I don't think a lot of people expected Arkansas to win this game a couple weeks ago. So if they lose this game, fine, whatever, move on. Put up a valiant effort. Put up a valiant effort against the Commodores team that is good, but really good at home. So we'll see if the Razorbacks can take down the Commodores. That is all the Lutties Look Back you could ever hope and ask for. A very long show for you guys this weekend, as this is one of the last few weeks of crossover season with basketball and baseball. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. It is Lutties Look Back episode 23. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.